What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with all the Flat Earth Debate pre-show and after show goodness. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum. Now, I'm actually a little bit late setting up the show this morning, so rather than rushing to get the pre-show done, I'm actually going to pass over to the live show. And as this will go out on my secondary channel, I'm a little bit less fussed about leaving the microphone open, hoping for a few guests to join and hopefully introduce themselves while I wait and indeed set up for the first live show of this, a very tired Monday morning. Hey, Ranty.
Howdy, you alright?
Hi, I can't hear you. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Once she sounds Ranty, I'm just going to sort a couple of things out. Don't go anywhere.
Alright.
Right. It's a good job this isn't a Friday, eh? This is going out to the second channel, this bit of the pre-show, with literally no conversation for about 5 minutes.
Well,
Well,
that's
maybe...
life. That's life.
Well, no. It's not just life. So, Slick has been, like, a bit rude and then ousted from one of the Skype groups. One of the groups that I'd shared this link with before the show starts. So that's why Slick's not here, and he'd normally be chit-chatting away with us.
I'd say he was a bit more than a bit rude, let's be honest.
I was being kind.
Yeah. Big John kicked him. Totally deserved as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, he asked me to make him a moderator in the Bullbusters or whatever it was Skype group. I've forgotten which group it was now. Anyway, and that then took me about half an hour with me getting really annoyed because I couldn't figure out how to do it. Now that they've changed the program and you just can't use... Maybe you can, I haven't tried. I re-downloaded the old classic version of Skype probably about 3 times until eventually I just gave up doing it because they just kept on wiping it and replacing it with the app version, which is why now on... If you ever watch a show and you can hear the Skype ringing in the background, it's because there's no way to turn it off. You can, but then you literally get no way of knowing that Skype is even contacting you. You can't just have like a little discrete box flash up, which would be the ideal. Turn the ringer off and keep all the other notifications on, but you can't seem to do that. So there we go. It's a very frustrating piece of software now, Skype.
Yeah, it's a shame you can't go back to the original.
Well, like I say, I did about 3 times. But it just kept wiping it. Just wipes it of its own volition. And by about, like I say, the 3rd time of putting it back on, I was like, I give up. They obviously don't want you to have the classic version.
It's a bit of a bummer. So what's the plan today? We're doing 2 shows, 1 show?
2 shows. Because it's bank holiday, there's no classes for me to go to. So, it's quite good in a way. I had to have a snooze. No Monday classes. And back to normal tomorrow, but normal is, fits within me having 2 shows anyway, so normally I would have 1 on Monday, but today I will do 2. That in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, don't talk about sleep. I've not had any. Literally, I had about an hour last night. Just couldn't sleep.
Any particular reason?
When your mind starts racing on stuff, it just doesn't stop, so you continually start thinking over and overthinking things. So, yeah, just one of them. Normally flat Earth related, I might say.
Oh, it's flat Earth related?
Well, I always seem to wake up in the night and then I'm fixated on something and I can't bloody sleep for hours because I'm thinking about it.
Really?
Until I actually, do it all the time.
I thought you were at peace with this now.
Yeah, that's what I keep trying to tell myself, but my mind won't stop.
Well, that's clearly you're not at peace with it.
Still looking for the answers, Nath. You know what it's like.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now we are joined by Chocolate Sane and Ranty Flat Earth. Welcome to both of you.
Howdy.
Howdo.
Howdo. Where's Chucky? Is he there?
He's on mute at the moment. He's at work though, so I'm sure he'll come off mute when he gets an opportunity.
Hello. What's up, guys?
What's up, Chucky? How's it going?
Not too bad. How are you?
Cool. How come you get to have time off work? Be at work and still participate?
Oh, because I usually work with my hands, so so that's why I got a Bluetooth in. So I work and I debate.
Okay, fair enough.
Why not?
You do a bit of housekeeping?
Nah.
Nah? What do you mean, nah? Yeah.
Go on then.
How you doing,
Oh,
Sleeping
tell me.
Warrior?
But
Riley?
Just in time for housekeeping. Any signs of curvature?
absolutely none.
Earth curvature, you mean?
Yeah,
Of course.
should have thought. Hey, Paul.
No, there is no sign of Earth curvature, Nathan. It's all optical.
Hey,
Yeah.
Paul. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very well indeed. Any signs of axial rotation again of the Earth-based variety, Ranty?
Hell no.
No.
Right, scientific evidence of gravity.
Oh,
Scientific evidence of what?
there is a claim.
Hello.
Not
Yeah,
bad, not bad.
There's a
What?
claim.
Yeah, there is a claim.
Oh, excellent. Let's hear it.
Did you anybody miss Globebusters, or did we all watch it last night?
Oh, I saw it.
I know you were going to talk about this, Riley.
Yeah, I knew you were going to talk about it
Okay,
too, to be fair.
I didn't, so you'll have to fill me in.
Okay. So on Globebusters last night, Bob made some assertions without any evidence whatsoever other than his hunch. Now, to be fair, he is and was spitballing for the most part. However, he dogmatically asserts for the other part where he's not spitballing that there is definitely a force here. There's definitely a force in play. Now, we're going to have to go through this because there's clearly disagreements with this is the beauty of why Flat Earth is not a cult. So for anybody that thinks that we are culty, then I'm sorry, but this is good evidence that proves that this is not culty, because this is a disagreement on topic. And it's going to be done properly, because Bob can be a little bit sensitive about people that disagree with him. So I'm going to do it as nice as possible so that I don't cause any rifts, okay?
How dare you? Bob is about as conciliatory as it is when it comes to things like this.
Whoa, say that again.
But how dare you? Bob is completely amiable. I don't know how you can ever suggest such a thing.
Sure. But I don't want to. What I'm trying to present to the audience here. Bear in mind, I'm going to talk to mainly our audience rather than the ballers. I'm going to do it like the nicest way possible, so that it's not any kind of friction. It's purely down to what's said and what he's asserting. So I need to do a sound check first. Just let me know that you can hear this, Nathan.
So, hello.
Hello. Yes, we heard that, Nate. We heard that, Tony.
I
Yeah.
heard so. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, that was
me.
Arwin. Hey, Arwin.
It's me, Arwin.
I thought, what is Arwin on Globebusters? That was a bit strange. Let's
What?
try that again.
Wow.
Let's just try that again, Anthony.
No, that was just my Jessiconda voice.
Of course, when we're doing a sound check, it would be Arwin. Best moment to talk.
Right. So I'm gonna do a sound check. Just let me hint. His first word is so.
So,
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play some of these clips, right? And I'm going to, I've got 3 main clips to play. This is the biggest chunk. I'll segregate this, or I'll split it up into bits so that we can chat about it. But listen to what he says. Now, I'm going to take ownership of this. He may or may not have aimed this at me. I don't think he did aim it at me, because if he did, he got the assertion wrong. But I'm going to act as though it's aimed at me, because I do push this view, because I want to see proof that there is a force claim.
Riley, you're falling into the same trap that you once set. You're doing Adele.
And you're doing a rumpus.
Mm,
I'm going to get some popcorn and go on mute.
Yeah, Owen, would you do me a favour as well? Would you go and get some popcorn too?
Yeah, it's just
Not-
save it till after the end, because otherwise, if you interrupt the recording,
No,
it's
no,
gonna
I'll
get
not
really
interrupt.
disjointed. It's just going to get really disjointed. It's one thing for us because we can react live, but the recording can't. So
I'm going to start with I'm going to split this chunk up, because this is a few minutes. This one, so I'm going to try and skip through the bits that we don't need. But the gist of it is that he's demanding that there's a force. He spitballs about what's causing it. That bit's fine, but it's the demanding of the force bit that I want to focus on.
sorry,
Let's go.
I'm just really
Go on.
confused. I'm sorry to interrupt before you've even started, but this started off with you saying, was this an answer to axial rotation or gravity?
Gravity.
Oh, so okay. Any scientific evidence of gravity? This is what we've got. Great. Sorry, Anthony. Go ahead.
This is a claim for gravity. Okay.
There's something that I want to talk about here a little bit, because there are certain people in this community, and many of you know who he is. I'm not going to mention his name, but he seems to think that the only thing, and a lot of people think this, and I just want to kind of chime in on my 2 cents about this, about gravity forces and stuff like that. But this particular person seems to think that the only thing that matters is density and buoyancy. All right. Well, that's great. And I'm certainly not going to say that density and buoyancy are not a factor, because they absolutely are, when we're talking about what we're perceiving as gravity. Now, as I have said many times before and started saying, I don't know, I think damn near from the very first episode of Globebusters, 4 years ago, that, the density and buoyancy argument works great, but there is still something that is determining up from down.
Now, the minute he said this, I realized that this is now. I don't know whether he's aiming this at me or not, because I do push this view, but he's not got the assertion right. I don't say that density and buoyancy is it. That isn't the assertion. The phrase that I use is relative density, because basically this does explain everything. It explains the acceleration. It explains the direction, the so-called direction. But he says that there is still something that is defining up from down. Well, the thing that defines up from down, if I pull up my thing here, here we go. So this is a definition for vector. Now, Bob knows this, but I don't think I think he's forgotten it. If you're a vector in maths, right, a quantity having direction as well as magnitude, especially as determining the position of one or more point in space relative to another. What was that, Nathan?
I think that was from your own equipment. You're feeding back or something.
Oh, it might be me feeding back, because I'll have to knock that off. Hang on. I'll have to keep turning that back on when I play it. Anyway, so the point is, he's got this this definition for vector. He seems to be forgetting this, right? Look, the key phrase is, it's a quantity having direction as well as magnitude, especially as this is the bit, especially as determining the position of one point in space relative to another. Now, the thing is, we're all familiar with the density tower, right? So I'll just flick this on, hopefully quickly. Where is it? Density layer. Shut my door, hang on. Shut up. So, if we consider the definition for vector, or a definition for vector, let's see if I can get this on screen at the same time. We have, I thought I was going so lovely. Right, there we go. So all of these layers can be given numerical values, right? And they're all relative to each other. They don't mix, they're immiscible. But because they don't mix, they've got to take up a position that's not the same position as somewhere else. And the thing that orders it is the density itself. Now, it doesn't matter what they're called. It doesn't matter whether they're numbers, letters, types. It doesn't matter. They can be called horse hooves. Who cares? But they're all relative to each other. Now, the bit that Bob seems to be forgetting is the vector is determined by the position of one liquid in space relative to another. So you have, in this instance, you have the water and you have the dish soap. And relative to each other, a vector is created by virtue of the two things like next to each other. The vector is created by these two things. So what about the acceleration? Well, do you remember when we did, do you remember when Nick from Phuket Word did his, where's the gravity gone? Let's go to it, because this is a really good video. Show me the gravity. I think, no, where's the gravity gone? Where did gravity go? Hopefully I'll find this really quick. Where did gravity go? It's in my history because I watched it earlier on. It's fabulous. Go on, quick.
Shout out to Gary Awesome.
Oh, where is this video? There we go.
To have us been
Shout out retracted.
Why?
So in this video,
Oh, wait, I know why.
he's got two mediums that look the same, but they're not the same. And one of them is just tap water, and the other one's been altered with salt water. And what he does is he shows that when you put the egg in one of them, the egg sinks. But when you put the egg in the other one, it floats. So we know the density of the egg is constant, but we can tell by virtue of what the egg's doing that the medium are different. Both mediums are not the same because the egg's not doing the same thing. So we know relative to each medium that the egg is either sinking because it's more dense or floating because it's less dense. But what he then does, which is a stroke of genius, and this is the bit that really Bob needs to play with himself, because that sounded terrible. Bob needs to redo this himself, because this basically changes everything for him. It should do anyway. What he does is he adds a little bit of the more dense water to the less dense solution, changes the density of the medium, and then displaces the egg. That's the key point. It displaces the egg. Nothing else was changed. Now, we know that in scientific method, that the independent variable is the thing that you change in your test that's going to denote what is the cause and the effect. It's going to be the cause. So if we're to accept that the cause in a scientific experiment is the independent variable and the thing that you manipulate, he's just literally created a movement without having a force. Now, Bob has on screen in his video, whilst he's talking, he has the definition of force. Now, that egg, he's caused that egg to change its position by changing the medium that's around it. That vector, that creates the vector, and that creates displacement. And that is perfectly in line with what it says for the definition for vector, because it's determining the position of one point in space relative to another. So the egg would be one point, and then relative to the other, it's the other. And the cause was changing the medium. We've done that ourselves. So if we accept the independent variable as the cause, then the cause was changing the medium by adding a little bit of more dense or less dense water to it. However, when Bob's talking, let's go back to this. When he gets to a certain point, he has on screen. Well, he actually has on screen the definition of force, and what the bit he concentrates on is a force can cause an object with mass to change its velocity. And he literally says the words, if you've got an acceleration, you've got a force. You can't get around it. It's always going to be the case. And that's literally what he says. But he ignores the word interaction. He misses it. Maybe probably accidentally, maybe skims over it, but it requires an interaction. So if you go for another definition of force, it's just to see whether or not there's consistency. There's another just type in force definition. Strength or energy as an attribute.
Hold on, it's a formological fallacy, isn't it?
Go on.
Well, if he says if there's acceleration, then there must be a force. That's true. But does that mean that gravity must be acceleration caused because it is apparently there? That sounds like a formological fallacy. Right?
It's not true, because we got the egg to displace or change its position or accelerate, and we didn't apply a force. But the key is look at the word in it. The word he misses is the word interaction. And then if you go for a secondary definition, is just to see that we're not cherry picking or being unfair. Another definition states that it has to be a physical action or movement. So the problem we have is strength or energy as an attribute of physical action. So there's got to be a physical action, but then it does say or movement. So that's where it gets a little bit weird, because that allows F equals ma to come into it. But you can look up all the definitions of force that you want, and it's a bit like looking up definitions for gravity. They all kind of say around about the same kind of thing, and it gets a little bit confusing. But the point is, if there's a force, I'm going to assert that there has to be some element of physical action, because what's creating the force? Now, that's what Bob argues about, is spitballing for whether it's electrostatic or whatever. And I'm not really bothered about whether or not it doesn't matter what he's spitballing. The point is there a force there in the first place? Forget about what causes it. Is there a force? I'm going to say there's no force, and we don't need a force because we can demonstrate it without applying any force. So what would be interesting here is if Bob got this same test and he got a jug and he got the egg into the point where it's neutrally buoyant in the middle. And then if he took 50 meters out, oh, by the way, I don't think that sound played through then, did it? Oh, no, I didn't play sound. It's okay. If he took 50 milliliters of this jug, the medium that's in the jug, take 50 mils out of it, and then replace that same 50 mils with salt-saturated solution of the same volume. So salt-saturated 50 mils, put it back in. What should happen firstly, he's going to disprove gravity as a thing, right? Because what will happen is the density of the salt solution will drop to the bottom, and it'll force the egg to rise up, because that'll add to the vector. That'll create movements, right? But if we know the salt solution is most dense, and it should pool at the bottom, according to what we're told, but that would add to the weight of the mass of the Earth below it, and it should attract the egg towards it. But we know it's going to push it away. So on the one hand, he's going to literally add the mass here, should pull the egg down, but we know it'll displace the egg, and the egg will rise. So that'll prove that gravity doesn't exist. That's the first point. But the second point for Bob to consider is, if he does put the salt solution in and it pools at the bottom, then he's just altered the density of the medium by removing 50 mil and then putting it back in again, the same water but saturated. So he's got to explain, why is there a displacement when there's no force? Because we can explain with vector, because we know the vector, two mediums relative to each other. He's got to explain how there's a movement if there's no force, because there is no force. But he'll say, well, it's moving. There's the fact that you've got an accelerating mass, F equals ma, right? No, because we've manipulated, the cause was changing the medium. The cause was not adding a force. So it gets semantic with the definition of words, the meaning of words. But I want to go back to these last two bits here, because I didn't really play all of that. But listen to what he says.
No sound.
Ooh, okay. So it's going to be that. It's one of them two.
While he's doing that, hey Nathan, I don't know if you're aware of it. I sent you a message, but the link in the description is the Discord server, not the Hangout.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about this. But the bottom line is that gravity, whatever it is indeed a force, right? There has to be a force that is applied that causes this acceleration, right? You cannot have acceleration without a force, right? So density and buoyancy by themselves are not going to cut it. It just, there has to be something there that sets that initial bias potential for up. I hope people understand.
For the love of God, you just caused a load of feedback. Could you not just stay on mute while it played?
It just, there has to be something there that sets that initial bias potential for up from down. And I hope people understand that. But, those who go on and say, well, we don't need gravity because everything works fine with buoyancy and density. I'm sorry, it does not, because you cannot explain the acceleration that is taking place when you drop things from a very high place. Any comments on this, guys?
So he's talking about the acceleration at very high points, right? Well, in a very high tower, if you're going to drop an egg, if you do it it doesn't matter. Your egg has got a density that is greater than the medium in which it sits. That displacement we can replicate without dropping an egg. Now, he talks about when he walks up to the top of a tower, and then some people argue that that's to do with him putting the energy into it, and he rejects that. Okay, but the fact is, when we get this egg in this neutral buoyant position, then we can make that egg displace just by changing the medium it's in. No force required. Now, if you're going to argue that F equals ma, therefore you've got an accelerating mass, therefore you must have a force, again, this goes back to scientific method, because we do know that the presumed cause is the thing that we manipulate in the experiment, and we've manipulated the density around the egg. We did not add a force. Now, if you're going to claim that there was a force added because you've got an accelerating mass, I'm going to say, well, that's in addition to the density that we've just changed. So let's see the evidence for the force. And then you have to go back to the definition of force. And then basically he'll argue movement and I'll say physical action. But the reality is there isn't really a force there, is there? I don't think anybody would argue that there really is a force unless you're pro-gravity. Now, at the end of the day, the bottom line comes back to this last point that he says here. I'll play this bit and then we're done.
Somebody made the comment in the chat that if you lift something up and drop it, you're the force. No, I disagree with that. You are not the force. The force is what's causing the acceleration once you do let go of that object. Sure, I can take something up to the top of a building, and that's me all the way taking it up there and letting it go. But something else is acting upon it for it to accelerate beyond the zero velocity when it leaves my hand to when it hits the ground. Now, the only other...
Now, this is where I can wrap this up now, because, again, if we go back to this picture, where's it gone? There. Because the egg's in neutral buoyancy, right? It sits in the middle. He said that if you take it up to the top of a building, right? Well, let's do it the opposite way to make the point. If we pull this egg out of its state of equilibrium, its rest, its comfortable position, we know the egg is going to go back to its point of comfort. It's equalized. It's going to go back to equilibrium. What we're doing when we move something up or down, we are moving it further away from its point of equilibrium. So when you take an egg up to the top of a building, or in this case, we pull the egg back down again and let go of it, it's going to rebalance itself out. And we know the cause of it is relative density. So Bob's right on the one hand when he says density and buoyancy doesn't go far enough. But he's wrong on the other hand when he says you need to have a force. There needs to be a force, because you don't need to have a force. If there's a force in this, evidence please. But what we can demonstrate is relative density. We can demonstrate the vector is caused by the relative densities. We can make them displace because we do it. We are the cause. That's what the scientific method states, and that's where the evidence points. But what Bob should do, see, this has got like 70, whatever this unit is, 70, I don't know if it's fluid ounces, 70 fluid ounces. If he took 10 fluid ounces out of this jug, replaced it with saturated salt solution of the same volume, and then put that back in so the water level went back up there, that egg would be pushed upwards. But the more dense mass should be down here at the bottom, because we know that's what will happen. And then that should add to the Earth's mass. So the egg should be attracted towards it. You disprove gravity immediately. But Bob would need to explain why the egg would displace upwards when he changes 10 fluid ounces of water and replaced it with saturated salt solution, because he is causing that by changing the medium. He's doing it. Where's the force? If you're going to claim there's a force, demonstrate said force, because we can demonstrate the medium. Anybody got any views?
Yes.
Sorry, Arwin, go on.
Yeah, thanks for rambling on like that. Jesus, that's like 2 years all over again. Okay, yeah, there is a force. It's part of the relative density. It is part of the mass. It is what is actually varied in the supposed gravity test, right? The mass. It has force that inherently appears when a disequilibrium point is reached. It happens. That's the force. There is definitely a force causing the displacement, and it is inherent to the density of things. The density offset is what causes the displacement, an acceleration, and that is a force. There is a force, Riley. It's just not a force field applying to all things, and that is what they presume.
Arwin, my question is, where is that force before the medium around that egg is changed? What is the force doing? Or does it have to be?
It's in an equilibrium. Right. It's not.
Right. So then, when they change the medium, when they add or take away the salt, the egg moves, right?
Yeah.
So
and as Bob suggests, when there is motion, when there is displacement, there is a force. That is the force is causing the displacement. It's just simply inherent to matter. That it has.
So you're saying the force doesn't appear or affect the object until the medium is changed?
Right, until it becomes in this equilibrium state.
So then how can we ever find out what the force is if all we're doing is changing the medium?
We can never. We can just determine that there is force, and we can directly relate it to the relative density theory and not presume that it is some kind of a field that penetrates everything and pushes everything down. That's not the case. It's simply a force that springs forth. When matter is in a relative density disequilibrium state and it has maneuverability, then force appears into being in that thing and displaces it until the equilibrium point within the relative density spectrum has been found, has been achieved. I'm done now.
I mean, it does make sense, but at the same time, I don't see changing just the medium prove the force. I mean, maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Okay, can I summarize
What
this? Go ahead, Paul. Go ahead.
Force at an equilibrium does not exert any motion, in response to chat.
What if it's we're kind of looking at this in a different way, or maybe we're looking at it wrong. Like when you pull the balloon down, in a way, you're kind of adding energy or kinetic energy to the balloon. Then in a sense, the energy is released. And so, like when you're pouring the water into, or that solution into the container, you're actually adding some level of kinetic energy because of the. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but it's not a force. It's just you're applying energy to it. Because I looked up the definition of energy, and one of the definition here, I'll share it so you can see what I'm talking about. I could be way off base. I'm just trying to think.
Mind warped.
Just trying to think outside the box here. Do you see my screen now?
Yeah, we got you up. Hey, Anon, how you doing?
Okay,
What's up, Nathan?
so
Go ahead, Paul.
what is energy explained? You know, obviously one of the explanation for energy is motion or kinetic energy. Do you see what I'm going? So instead of we're thinking about a force, but it finds equilibrium, and that means that there's potential energy there, but there's no kinetic energy. You know, but once you apply anything to that, whether me lifting it up, I'm actually applying kinetic energy to that object. I'm just I'm throwing out ideas. You guys can help me.
No, you're right, Paul. Is anybody going to? Before I summarise it, I just want anybody else to chuck their 2 pennyworth in. But you're right. Anybody? Right. Up and down are not objective directions. They are relative. What are they relative to? Well, shock horror, the medium. Generally speaking, unless someone can tell me between now and when I finish this statement with one of the pictures on screen, generally things are in equilibrium, or at the very least trying to find equilibrium and very quickly find it. Now, all of the examples I heard were picking things up and dropping them off buildings, quickly to then disregard the fact that they've been picked up and taken to the top of a building. So Anthony's example I can better. Sorry, Anthony. There's a lake with buildings in it in Wales. It's literally an old town that they've flooded. It's now a massive, great big lake. So there's buildings in there. Now you could go in your scuba kit with your egg, go to the top of a building, hold it out, let the egg go, and it would go up. Well, you've climbed to the top of a building, let an egg go, and it's gone up. Well, why? Well, because it's not an objective direction. It's relative to the medium. So that's the first point. The second point is, Paul's just summarised it really. Yeah, you're putting energy in. Simple as that. Unless you can show me where there's a disequilibrium, generally speaking, I don't see eggs falling to the ground as a natural tendency. Generally, as a natural tendency, things are in equilibrium until you force them out of it. Any other scientific or otherwise evidence of gravity?
Nope.
Perfect. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No.
Nope. I was going to say, a pretty good argument you could say to the whole like egg dropping theory is like, say if you had a ball full of atmosphere or air in your hand and you let it go into the atmosphere, which is the same density, what's it going to do? It's just going to stay exactly where you left it. So its density isn't it? So the egg, obviously, it's denser. It's going to fall. Is that what you're getting on? Is that what you mean?
Not really. Show me this falling egg.
Sorry.
Where do we generally observe things falling? Where does this naturally occur? You could say rain, and I could say condensation or humidity rather. There you go. It's not going down, is it? It's going up. Oh right. You know that's not.
Yeah.
But other than that, you show me where there's stuff tending to fall towards the ground.
How about leaves and branches and?
Oh right. So I'll go back to the ocean bed. Something's growing on the ocean floor, a leaf, so to speak. It breaks off. Does it go down or does it float to the top?
I'm not sure. That depends on its density.
It depends on the medium. So it's relative.
Also?
So we're not talking objective directions. We're talking relative directions.
Right. Well, it depends on both the medium and itself.
So we don't need to concern ourselves with attributing a force to a relative direction now, do we? That's absurd. You can argue about this all day if you like, Arwin. This is one of those things.
Comes into being. I'm not suggesting there is a gravity force field applying constantly. I'm just saying there's force manifesting as soon as something is out of equilibrium.
Saying the same things that you've been saying for about 18 months.
No,
I'm at peace with
I'm
this.
not.
There is no need to attribute a force to a relative when it is relative.
Displacement is part of relative density theory, and it is the force that actually drives the motion, the displacement.
In which direction?
That's
this absolute direction of down that we have? Oh, we don't have one.
Towards its equilibrium. Very simple.
Towards equilibrium. That's not down then, is it?
I'm not claiming it is down.
Well, what are we talking about then? The force of what?
The force of the displacement.
Well, that's a force of displacement.
In motion. It can be when it's not in its equilibrium point.
You're talking in double Dutch. That's the displacement itself, isn't it? For some things they go down, others they go up.
So there is a force.
Arwin, I've just said, you might be triggered about this because you're just
I'm not triggered about anything,
well, stop
Nathan.
talking
I'm
over me then.
Discussing
Why are you talking over me then? I didn't interrupt while you said the same thing 6 times. I sat and patiently listened. Now I'm talking, and you want to talk all over me. Yeah, we're not in any rush to assign a force to a relative direction. It's simply benign. It's not needed. There is no need. So when you say, well, there is a force, the force of it going to its equilibrium, well, which direction would that be? Oh, it doesn't have one. Yeah, that's the point here, isn't it? We're talking about the force of down, which we don't have.
Doesn't it go in a direction then?
What
Never?
Direction relative to what?
That's to the not the question. Direction.
Yeah, the direction's relative to the bloody medium. That's exactly the question. That is the question because
it move away from
it doesn't have an absolute direction. That's the point.
I'm not asking about a direction. I'm just asking, is it moving away from where it was?
Yeah, that's what Anthony covered right at the start. Yeah, so you can assign a vector, not an absolute down. And then give that Arwin, why are you doing this?
Well, you're putting words in my mouth.
I'm not. I'm just talking.
Down, you down.
I'm just say down. Talking. You don't like it. That's the problem here.
I don't like having words put in my mouth.
I'm not.
That's correct. I never said down, Nathan.
I don't care what you said.
Well, then don't tell me that I used that.
You have decided to usurp this argument like it's against you. Right? There was a whole presentation that you couldn't shut your mouth through. Now you think this is about you. You're not the centre of the universe, Arwin. This wasn't about you in the slightest, was it? You've made it about you.
Are we still here?
Yeah, Arwin just buggered off when it was pointed out that he's completely hijacked this point made about him. So, to summarise, yeah, there is no objective down. Sorry, down is not an objective direction. It's a relative direction. That's what we're talking about, relative density. So you can't just say this will go down, because it's not necessarily the case. Ah, for Jesus wept. Mind warped.
Yeah, sorry, I just muted. I'm very sorry.
Moving on. Hey, McDonnie for you. How you doing? Hear us? You're on mute, my friend.
Hello, hello.
Good to have you.
Hello.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No.
Nope.
Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container?
Well, Blue Marble Science guy's done a response video recently. Have you seen it, Nathan?
I don't watch this garbage. Yeah, I get to see it here though, which is nice. What's his response?
Was that the one we're,
This is
is
the
that the one
same
we're talking
dude.
about the other day with the long tube going up the side of his chimney?
Right.
And he has butane gas?
That's the one.
Yeah, yeah.
Response. He's done a response, and basically what he's saying is, but in your video of Ballbusters number 5, I think he was referencing, he said specifically that, well, John demanded that it was a sealed unit, and I've got an open unit, so therefore you can have gas pressure next to a vacuum container or gas pressure without a container. Now, what he's doing is he's swapping the point that John's making initially with the point that he makes secondary. John's point is first, how do you have gas pressure without a container? That establishes that you have to have a containment. Their argument is gravity causes the containment. Okay. We can demonstrate gas pressure in a container, but they can't demonstrate gravity to cause anything, because you have to ask them, well, what gravity are you referencing? Are you referencing Isaac Newton stuff that was superseded by Einstein stuff? Or are you referencing Einstein stuff? But either way, you still can't demonstrate gravity causing anything. But they all think that it's proven, and he thinks that we've got to disprove gravity because it's been proven that many times over, and it's accepted by everyone. But he switched the burden of proof against us. We're asking for the proof for gravity, and we're using the atmosphere because it's a strong argument to demonstrate that we can demonstrate pressure with containment, but you guys cannot demonstrate gravity with containment, and that's our point. But what he does is conflates that point against the idea that he had an open pipe. He conflates that point with his secondary point, which is that he had an open pipe. And when he had his open pipe, he was happy to tell us that it didn't really move much over 3 hours. And he quotes John for saying, if I come back to the sulfur hexafluoride after 3 or 4 hours, it'd all be gone. And he was dead pleased that he used 3 hours because he's directly referencing John. What he's not doing is he's not comparing the two tests, because the sulfur hexafluoride was demonstrated in the fish tank that's got a massive surface area and a shallow pool, with his pipe that's got a very tiny surface area and a massive depth to it. So you're not going to get much entropy out of the pipe. But because he's conflating the two terms, he's saying that John's moving the goalposts, and it's basically John's being dishonest by pointing out that it needs to be sealed when we live in an open environment. But he's missing the point that the two separate points, they're not connected, but they are part of the topic. So basically, he says that, in short, he says that basically we can have gas pressure without containment in the atmosphere. That's it. And the second point is he says John demands that it's a sealed container, but we have an open system. So he's contrasting that point, but he doesn't realize that that kills it, because entropy does apply. And if we have an open system, the pressure from Earth would bleed into space pretty much immediately. So he's just not getting it yet. I don't know whether he deserves a response video, but his video was quite well done, to be fair. He's obviously thought about it. He's just not realized that it kills his own argument in doing so. The guy's a bit struggled.
Not really. We're asking for the gas pressure without the tyre, right? This is akin to someone giving a tyre a slow puncture and going, look, I've come back 3 hours later and it's still got pressure inside it. It's like, no. We want to see the gas pressure without the container. So without the tyre, we want to see the gas pressure existing around the rim, if you like, of the wheel, but without the rubber bit around it, not with a slow puncher.
Which you can't do.
Yeah. He hasn't thought about his video response properly. He has done a video response. It is worth watching. And I did comment on it, but I don't know I don't think I'm going to respond to it because he hasn't realised the fallacious point that he's making actually works against him. But I'm sure John will be happy to have a go at that probably later on in the second show.
Well, I'm just happy to.
Like I said before, sorry.
No, you go ahead, man.
Like I said before, my chair is so squeaky. Sorry if it is going through my mic. Because he's using butane, which is 1 times heavier than air, plus the additives in there, because butane by itself has no smell. So they add additives so you know it's there, so you don't go and light a cigarette and blow yourself up. You know, he's injecting that into the bottom of that pipe. That air that's already going to be in that pipe, just from natural occurrence, is going to basically act like a cap anyway, creating a closed, pressured area, and its fastest escape is through that tube at the bottom that he attaches to the pressure monitor. So it's a flawed video. It's just proving a container of gas pressure.
Yeah. A gas gradient, and he's also failing to. The point I was making with the fish tank is based on a large surface area. The entropy that comes from a very small, like what is it, a 3.5 inch pipe or whatever it was. The pressure, the entropy that comes as a result of that is minuscule. It would take you days for it to disperse, but it will disperse. But do it in a fish tank, and let's see how that goes.
Yeah, in a fish tank, it would go straight away. I mean, that tube, if he came back the next day, there'd be no pressure in there because it would have escaped eventually. But just because of the density of the two gases, it's basically capped. You know, there's no difference between him capping the end of that pipe or having the oxygen that was already in that, or the atmosphere that was already in that pipe, and then injecting the butane at the bottom, which he did. It's the same thing.
It's in no way. He's utilised relative density, demonstrated that you can have gas pressure gradients in a container. And that's it. The entropy effect might have been slowed by virtue, as you point out, the massive surface area of the pipe, the container he's using, when he utilises the pressure gradient and, as you put it, a more dense gas at the bottom. But entropy is still going to take effect, all the same. I mean, I said this, like you say, he's all chuffed that he's got 3 hours. It's like, well, that's an equivocation. We were talking about sulfur hexafluoride, again, a massively increased density of gas, man-made, I might add, that they put in a fish tank, as opposed to your equivalent of a slow puncture. You know, you've got this massive, great big tube with a huge surface area, an open top, and then a more dense gas at the bottom. So you're skewing it to make it seem like the tiny opening at the top is equivalent to a curved surface with no sides. Because in terms of what you're trying to create in terms of an equivalent, you're trying to create the equivalent of that fish tank without the sides and a curved bottom. Well, that's in no way equivalent to a tube with a massive surface area and a differing gas in terms of its density. You know, no, that's not the same. What we want to see is gas pressure without a container. I thought we made it really clear.
Yeah, he's claiming that his pipe is not containment, and I'm like, dude, pipe is the operative word. He doesn't get it. He thinks he gets it.
What's he measuring? What's on the needle, Anthony?
2 meters per the pipe.
What's on his needle that's attached to the container?
Containment.
No, the needle. What's it measuring?
Pressure.
So it's measuring PSI.
I'm not sure what unit it was in.
Anybody?
Probably would have been.
Let's assume it's measuring PSI. Yeah. Well, it might be bar. It doesn't matter what name we attribute to it. It's measuring the amount of pressure put on the walls of the container. That's what it's measuring. How much pressure is this butane putting onto the walls and onto this needle? Well, that's how you get the pressure measurement. It's measuring the force on the walls of the container. So we need to see that needle not attached to a container, even if you've got one that's managed to force a cap through relative density. Yeah? Well, what do for you? Nice, well done for actually supporting our argument. but you've definitely got a container. That's what the needle's measuring. The pounds
I'm pretty
per
sure
square
most
inch.
bloggers would agree that it was a flawed experiment. You'd have to be dumb to not realize it.
Yeah, the needle's measuring the pounds per square inch of the walls of the container. Per square inch of what? The container.
The thing is, Nathan, we can forgive this guy because he's quite new for being a little bit green, dumb, stupid, whatever. I think the bigger point is Bob, the science guy, or Bob, the fallacy guy. His response video was the most dishonest response video I've ever seen, and he pushes it in that smarmy, patronizing way that I love it when Nathan does it the same way. He's mastered that, and that's what that Nathan. You should look on Bob the Science Guy as your mentor in terms of presenting, because that smarminess is the way to do it. It's really patronizing, condescending, and horrible. However, his points that he makes are literally contradictory, opposite, wrong, false, and he has to make this sound as though there's an argument there. And I was watching. I spent time responding to it, and I saw Dawn Treader in my chat. And Dawn Treader demonstrated that he was influenced by what Bob the fallacy guy said. Now, the problem is Bob the fallacy guy is talking and influencing people to make them think that you can have somehow a gas pressure next to a vacuum without containment, because he's lying about what's being said. Now, Dawn didn't notice that it was an intentional deception, a lie, a false fact. But if I did that, I would be hung, drawn, and quartered. So why is no one calling this out on the ball side?
Because they're all cheats and dishonest.
Yeah, I'd just like to add on to what you just said, Tony. Like this guy, even though he's green and he's probably new to the whole thing, he should be applauded for actually going out and doing stuff like that. And I think we should highlight the fact that it's great that people go out and do these observations and do these things, and it's good. It's a good thing. So we should support it, and then sit here and do what we do and debate it and pick up the flaws. So then people can actually move on and try and, different observations, and then try and work things out. But yeah, the guy, in all honesty, he tried his best, but it was flawed, obviously. But he should still be, at least told, good try.
Yeah,
I agree.
There's two ways of looking at it. One is to say, well, yeah, you've managed to get your name mentioned, and we've talked about Blue Marble Science. Whether or not this shout-out will get retracted, I don't know. But ultimately speaking, we're still ripping apart his assertions as being completely fallacious. So, would you take that as a compliment if it was your work that we were featuring and we were saying how stupid you were?
I think there's an onus on the ballers to correct this guy. I mean, there's been a few things recently that we've pointed out that people like conspiracy cats should be pointed out, that if you don't manipulate your independent variable in a scientific test that your claim improves something, then you're not actually complying with scientific method. But conspiracy cats knows that he can't comply with scientific method when it comes to the shape of the earth, because he'd be out of a job if he did. So I at least understand with him that he can't do that. However, the Rumpus hasn't got a job to protect. The Rumpus should be calling things like this out. Jeremy Gempanda should be calling things out, because if you don't comply with scientific method, it's pseudoscience, and there are errors being made on the ball Earth side, which of course they project onto us in some way, flip it against us, and then basically laugh at us in some way. End of the day, if it's not scientific method compliant, guys, it's pseudoscience, it's fake science, and the ballers are committing that crime. And it's like, why aren't ballers calling this out? They should be self-regulating themselves, because they claim peer review process and all that. Where's the people on the baller side going to challenge or tell Blue Marble Science that he's not getting this right? Bob the Science Guy absolutely needs calling out by ballers, because he's contradicting himself and he's misrepresenting, giving false statements of fact. Why is this being ignored? Come on, ballers. Are you not intellectually honest enough to call out your own? Have I been kicked?
No. I was just seeing if anybody reacted.
Where's Alan gone?
I think he dropped because I told him off because he got triggered when I pointed out there was no objective up and down.
I had to answer something happened in the background of the phone, but that was one of the points I wanted to address. I'll just mention it really quick while he's not here. Bob thinks that there's a relative up and down as well. Now, Nora also thinks that. Mark Doxey thinks that. And Arwin obviously still thinks that. up and down are not the units in play here. When we're doing the eggs going up and down, the density and the buoyancy, it's not up and down. The units that we're talking about is dense over less dense, but we describe them as up and down in the same way that we say hot and cold. But it doesn't mean that hot and cold is like the valid units that we're using. Technically, it's hotter and colder, referencing the temperature in the same way that up and down is referencing the density or the less dense. So yeah, I agree. There is no up and down. It's just a state relative to whatever your mediums are at the time. Einstein got this bit right. Relativity is relative to everything that you're talking about in the context of what you're talking about, and we can demonstrate it. So the idea that there's a relative, that there's an up and down, no.
Good job. It's a good job. John's not here. Hey, physics warrior.
Hey, Nathan. When I hear somebody say relative, I think of a third person.
You think of a what?
A third person.
I think of
like a descendant
third
relative. Yeah, kin.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're equivocating.
It's unfortunate.
Relativity is.
Relative.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, Nathan, it's kind of interesting how you have to use relative to make this type of explanation. I mean, I get it. This up and down. Relative to what? You know what I mean? And for this particular model that we're supposed to be on.
Relative to the densities in question.
Yeah. Even the density. Okay, so the relative density in question right now is due to the concept of up and down, and that's all they have is just up and down. I mean, if we're going to identify this omnipresence of this force, whatever this G word is at, it should have this omnipresent all over, no up and down. Although I find it as a phenomena that we're going to use this particular force, this acceleration force or density is down. So I'm not happy with that because we have a relative in there.
Can I ask the question maybe along those lines? Maybe wouldn't it be a better question to say, or like, why do denser things move towards the ground or towards the earth or whatever you want to term it, and less dense things move away from the earth towards the sky?
Yeah, you're referencing what you should be referencing is the mediums that they're all relative to. So, for example, the egg that's in that neutral buoyancy position, it isn't moving towards either earth or sky. It's sat in its neutral buoyant position because its density is equal to the medium in which it's in. But if you then say, oh, look, it's moving down towards the center of the earth, I'm going to say it's just moving to its state of buoyance, like it's looking for its equilibrium, and it's displacing because it's in a state of disequilibrium. That's why it moves. Now, if you're going to claim that there's a force doing it, I'm going to say, but we know it's density related. Where's the additional force? Oh, well, it's accelerated mass. No, the accelerated mass isn't the force. It's just a state of disequilibrium relative to the medium it's in that shouldn't be where it is.
Do a quick shout out to Agent Dubsky for hitting the super chat ages and ages ago. Thank you very much indeed for your support. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Anthony. I do get it. It's just, I guess, and I'm not even saying more moving towards the center of the earth. I'm not even. But that phrase wasn't even in what I was describing.
I got your question. Paul, you want us to walk off the ball and find out the way how density is different from the altitude versus locally on the ground. The only way to find that conceptual idea is we have to walk off the ball and not assume that there is a center, which is the whatever they're pre-indicating. Other than the only proof that we have right now is these magnetic ley lines and nodal points. How I perceive to look at it actually is that these ley lines and nodal points in this physical reality is like no different than a rebar and a cement mix, creating the shape of whatever building it is. But however, these ley lines are below the dirt, and they do have effect with our electronics, our compasses, and a strong possibility that we're actually why we're stuck here on the ground. So, I mean, just how I see it, like a UN map, like an actual, it's everything's like flattened out, and you see all those grid points, those axes, or degrees. I could see it in that model, and then if I were to actually be on a plane or top of Mount Everest, I could see it. I mean, that our weight or our density should be a lot lighter because we're physically off the landscape of the Earth. That's my opinion, Paul, and that's I hope that kind of fits your that answer fits your question.
I guess in a way, but I mean, I guess I'm really talking about. I guess direction is a bad word. I guess maybe the better way to describe it would be why would they order themselves? Why do denser objects order themselves in such a manner where the denser things are towards the ground and the lesser denser things they order themselves in that way?
Because
and I'm not implying a force. What's that?
They don't like staying in a state of disequilibrium. The order is ranked by the density value, and it's the desire for them to find equilibrium for whatever reason. Because gravity shouldn't be selective over when it finds like its relative state. Gravity should apply always, but it doesn't. It seems to not apply with helium balloons. And also remember as well, Newton's third law. Newton's third law states that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. We always forget about that law when we're talking about the relative density or gravity or whatever, this topic, because every time there is a movement of any kind, there is an equal and opposite re-movement that we never talk about. So that balancing act itself tells you that gravity can't be what's going on, because gravity can't affect just one. It has to affect them both.
And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of today's debating panel for making this live debate possible. If you are watching on Nathan Oakley, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Also, of course, a massive thank you to all of you in today's live audience for liking, smashing the super chat, commenting, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
I'm not, because he usually goes to Spanish on Monday. So I don't.
That's right. That's right.
There will be a second show, guys.
Yeah, there will be.
Nathan,
Yay.
Yes.
Is there a second show?
Yes.
Great. I honestly think that Nora, Mark Doxey, Arwin, and now Bob are pushing this thing for whatever reason, this force idea for whatever reason. But with Nora, I think that she's pushing it for disinfo. Now, if I think that about Nora, I also therefore have to think it about the other one, the other people.
What do you mean disinfo?
I think Nora is deliberately pushing. I mean, she went down and met Roxanne recently, and Roxanne said to me, "What was your fallout with Nora over?" I said she argues gravity as a force and argues there's some general relative, there's some general up and universal down, and it's really divisive. But she argues it so vehemently and passionately, like she's a proper warrior on that point. I said, so just be careful with her. Within 5 minutes of that topic coming up, they were scratching each other's eyeballs out, because it's such a debate. It's such a topic that's so heated. And she falls out with a lot of people over it, but Arwin's on her side, Bob's on their side. So it gives them this perception that there is some credit to what their point is. And I can accept that. I can see that at least there is some support for it. But the evidence speaks for itself. The evidence doesn't have a force, but it does have a disequilibrium caused by density displacement. We can demonstrate that. That is the independent variable in science, and that is your cause. So where's the force?
Can I give you the concise statement that there is no objective up and down. It is relative to the medium.
Mediums.
Medium. No, because you're talking about a specific thing, right? In the example that we're detailing, there's been an egg or whatever picked up. Yeah? Well, the statement always holds true. There is no objective up and down. It is relative to the medium. Why am I getting so much feedback every time I talk?
Oh, it might be me, actually. Let me just check. Oh, no, it's not me.
Yeah. People with their mics wide open just ruin it. I listen back to the show and it breaks my heart every time, because people just sit there thinking, I want to talk in about 30 seconds. So I'm going to sit here, ruin whoever's talking's sentiment by holding my mic open indefinitely till there's a gap. So there is no objective up and down. It is relative to the medium.
Yeah.
Not even my Skype.
I'll agree with that.
And then Quantum Eraser arrives.
No, that's not. It's not me ringing. It's Anthony. He's got like every one of his desk lines routed to the main. Every one of your lines is routed out, Anthony. You realise that, right? You've got all of your desk lines routed out.
Well, I'm not sure. Oh, right, there we go. What's the difference between the one that said the virtual inputs, the first one, and the second one?
I don't know what you're talking about. On each line, so Yeti and then G+, then Skype, then your system volume, there's A1, which outputs to your speakers, and A2 outputs to the line that goes out to us. So other than your mic, just turn off everything. But at the moment, everything's turned on.
So you could hear Skype ringing then?
We can hear everything you do. It doesn't matter if it's a notification or a click of your mouse, we hear all of it. Because every one of those lines, A2 on your desk, is on for every line. So we hear everything you do.
And your girlfriend, Riley. So that's what we're saying.
Anyway.
Yeah, Riley. I didn't mean to have to call you yesterday during your live stream, but you had no sound going on.
Oh, it's me too. I called too. Yeah. No, you should do that. Don't ever apologise. If that was the case and I was broadcasting without sound, I'd hope somebody would call me.
I turned it off 2 minutes earlier while I was queuing stuff up because someone said it was switched on, and I forgot I turned it off. It's like, fuck.
Yeah. It is difficult
You weren't paying attention to chat at all. Like, even before I got into the chat, they were telling you.
It's easy to cock it up.
Paying attention.
I mean, Ballbusters is a very intense show for me to run. It's quite complicated, and there's loads of windows open. There's loads of lines that need to be kept monitored, make sure they're not open when they need to be closed, etc., etc. And it's just a lot to keep on top of, and it is easy to go wrong or get it wrong. Can you still actually say stuff though, Anthony? Can we still hear you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. See that now you're super clear, whereas when you've got all the lines open, you're like crackling and popping, and it sounds awful. Now you're super clear. Say again?
The interaction between the B1, B2, B. You know what? On your sound card, you got B1, B2. But I've got two. I've got a fader gain on two of them. And one of them bounces up and down when I'm talking, which is my sound card, but I don't know what the other one does.
The last one on the desk is the output itself.
No. The first three are the cables in, right? Yeti, Discord, Skype, whatever. But then the next two are sound card, and then there's another one that's next to sound card, and I don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. So you can set it to either. I don't know what the purpose of it. Maybe some people have two sound cards, but basically the last two lines on your the actual menu in the computer called sound, in the list of things that are on there, you can assign it to either auxiliary or main. So you can have it, depending on how you've set it up, it'll either be the left one or the right one. But it's either or. It might be that you can set it up so you can have one for one sound card and one for another, but you only need one at a time. It's just whichever one you've got it set to. If it's left, then I think it's the main system as opposed to auxiliary. But the auxiliary is just a spare. I ended up being on auxiliary just because I did. I don't know why.
Did Arwin rage quit or did he get kicked?
No, he rage quit because I told him off.
I don't get why he doesn't get this bit. It's like, it is so simple when you realise hot and cold isn't the right term to use when you're talking to temperatures. Really, you should be talking degrees because that's the way we measure it. We reference hot and cold because we know what it means, but we should be talking temperatures in the same way that up and down is, yeah, we understand what we mean, but what we should be saying in the case of density is like more dense over less dense. It's really simple. Get it. I don't get why he struggles with it.
Well, he did. The penny dropped while he was shouting, which was to say that he said it seeks its equilibrium. Well, it's like, no, we're talking specifically about a down. And he's like, I don't say down. It's like, well, up until now, I don't don't remember him saying that it's finding its equilibrium, because that could be in any direction, and we are talking about down.
And it gets confusing as well, because a lot of people think that things don't go left or right; they only go up or down. Well, that's not true. If you get like any medium and you start injecting a volume in there within the middle of it, and you don't know the density of the thing that you're putting in, what was the best? Right, you need to have two layers. You need to have two layers, one that's less than, one that's more than the density that you've got in your hand, and it'll sit in the middle. Now you start injecting that in, it will go left and right before it'll go up and down. And if there's restriction on the left and right, then it'll start to go up and down, and it'll move the thing above it up if it can, because you're putting it in, you're creating that, you're pushing it in, and it'll go in sideways until it reaches containment. I just don't get how people don't really get that point.
Did I say hello to 10th Man?
I don't know. Depends on when he joined.
I joined ages ago, and I kept on meaning to say hello to him, and never got around to it. I meant to say hello when I said hello to physics.
I'm back.
Right, what I'm going to do, Nathan, I'm going to drop, because I've said my bit for today, and Robin wants to speak to me, so I shall catch you guys in a bit.
Okie dokie. That might be a reason.
Hey, Nathan.
Hey, 10th Man.
Take care, Riley.
Hello, Nathan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering, I was watching one of your shows the other days about refraction. And there is this upload from Rodrigo Nunez. And there's a study about a concave refraction, where an object in the distance, you could see in full. And once it moves closer, it disappeared bottom side up. And I thought that would be very interesting footage for you. And I tried to get it up into your show for the last weeks, but I finally sort out how I can actually join this panel.
Is it actually your footage though?
No, it's the footage of Rodrigo Nunez, and I uploaded this specific 2 minutes on my channel. You know, I don't know if I can show it to you. I don't know how to do it. Is this with screen share, or how do I do that?
It's not your footage though.
No, but you can see it on Rodrigo Nunez. It's in the 11th minute or 12th. It's about an airplane that is in the distance. You can see it in full, and once it comes on the runway towards the camera, it disappears bottom first, and then once it moves forward, it comes back into sight. So this whole study is about concave refraction, and I thought this would be very nice for you to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm toying with the idea. If you can stick it up. So the way to share it, are you on a normal computer or are you on a mobile device?
Yes, I am on a normal computer.
Okay, so wave your mouse over the page with us on it, currently with a picture of a sun in the sky. Yeah. And then there'll be a box that appears on the left-hand side, and the second tab down is screen share. Just click on that tab.
Yes.
And then it'll give you a couple of options in a box.
Okay.
And one of them, it says either your entire screen, and then the next one along says application window.
Desktop Google Hangouts, that's what I see.
So you've clicked on screen share already?
Yeah.
Then it says share your screen in a box.
Google Hangouts. Let me see the desktop. Start
So
screen share.
If you move your mouse over the Hangouts page, there you go.
I got it. Do you see this?
Yeah, we see your screen.
Okay, so now watch this. This is from Rodrigo Nunez. So the airplane is in the distance. You can see it in full.
Sound? Can you mute the sound?
Yeah.
And then
1 second.
And then if you can make it full screen.
I will send you the video. It's a whole study about refraction.
Sure.
Where actually
if you can pause it,
light bends.
If you can just pause it.
See, now it's disappearing, and when it's moved further away from you, it comes back in full sight. And this is on a straight runway. Look at this.
Looks to me like it's hidden behind the inferior mirage.
There's a whole study about this.
Okay.
Looks like the inferior mirage is over the atmosphere, and the plane and the wheels and everything are just hidden behind that.
Well, no, they're not even hidden. They're doubled down. You can see, like, it looks like an X-wing, right?
Yeah,
it's just a normal airplane. When you can, I can send you the link of the video of this Rodrigo. It's an amazing. I don't know if you know him. He's this. Let me see, because I'm following this guy.
Looks like it's hydrogen.
His channel is called. You can find him. Let me see. Second.
Can you copy and paste it and put it into the Google back chat?
Here, and then I stop screen sharing.
Okay, so while those guys are figuring that out, I will say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the audience in the Nathan Oakley premiering stream for, again, tuning in, smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff. If you need to keep yourself occupied after this premiering stream is over, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Again, a massive thank you to all of today's debating panel. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!